Hope your day or night is going well. Got a book recently at the bookstore. It's called The Eternal Quest, Search for God, by David Manning White. And it's basically roughly 350, 330 pages of different quotes throughout time. And while some of them directly do reference a deity, there are many others which I found, and I was not surprised by, that talk about a general kind of wisdom, which essentially try to help a person um, see all that could be seen from different concepts, different perspectives, and opening to a world of ideas because you are simply looking at hundreds of minds, maybe even thousands, because there's a lot of quotes on each page about the universe we live in. And so I'm just going to read a couple of them, and I'll comment on them, and we'll try to do some exploration. And want to be aware of the time too. The first one is on page 196 in the subtitled chapter, if you will. They're kind of like chapters in this book. The Eternal in the Midst of Time. And here's the first quote. To see the eternal in the midst of time, to feel and to enjoy the infinite here in the finite, is one of the great blessings life has to offer. Plato used to say that life comes to its full glory when some beautiful object or some loved person suddenly opens for us a window that gives a glimpse into eternal reality. Rufus Jones, 1863 to 1948, and the work is entitled New Eyes for Invisibles. Yeah, I think a window that glimpses eternity or eternal reality. You know, there's a real, what would you say? There's a real thing to consider that while we are all united or connected in some way, the human species back to our origins in East Africa a couple 100,000 years ago, the unique experience that each person is able to have in their own form speaks to something which can help others. Maybe you shed light on something which previously you did not have light on, but you came to realize that only in the here and now can you actually, think in calm fashion, where the answers make their way to you. I think for some of us, there's always the thing of, well, what's the answer? I want it right now. And we're always go, go, go. Therefore, we might overlook wisdom that we have been given, which could solve maybe not every single problem you have, because some problems of suffering and existence are, they might be perpetual throughout your life. And yet there are enough of them that could be solved where the examination is worth everybody's time. And a window from another person into eternal reality might look like, a friend says to you, are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating healthy? Are you taking care of the basic needs of yourself that, the life that we have been told to live doesn't allow you to fully, do on a regular basis. We're always go, go, go. Some people adopt the life philosophy, we can sleep when we're dead. Isn't it true, though, that most of science says that if you don't get the proper sleep, you'll be dead much more prematurely than you would if you had gotten the sleep? Why is it that we are forced into a speedy, culture and, really overall existence where you don't have the time, you don't make the time, or you don't possess the perspective to look at things through another window, another reality? And what happens when you actually do end up doing it? Time slows down and you realize that some part of your suffering needs forgiveness. Some part of your suffering needed more sleep. Some part of your suffering didn't need $1 million. It might have needed financial stability, admittedly, a place to sleep. But there is a part of your suffering that is perpetuated by the ignorance, the unwillingness, the letting ego take over, the, letting life continue to run 1,000 miles an hour. There's something in that which doesn't allow us the proper attention and observation to observe that you might need to look from a different point of view. You might need to consider that another perspective could change what you know about reality 100% for the better. It could also do it for the worse. That is a gamble sometimes you take, but nothing will happen if you stay stagnant where you are. If I'm unwilling to admit that the window I look through right now is only a window into the past, the living is now, right now, here in this moment. Papa G, who you could look up on YouTube, great speaker. I think he passed away in the late 90s. There's a video called It's So Simple. The mind is like a graveyard. The past is like a graveyard. You can go there to reflect from time to time, but if you try to live there, the joy never comes now. It's the same with the future. You can prepare for it, and you can be excited about a trip coming up. But if you place everything on that, all attention, all energy, all resources, can you find the peace in the present moment? Type of thing. There's another quote. This is the chapter. I'm jumping around in this book here because it's pretty big with a lot of different quotations. This is a chapter called A Call to Prayer. And I'll read this one. I prayed to Earthmaker. And as I prayed, I was aware of something above me. And there he, with a capital H, was. That which is called the soul. That is it. That is what one calls Earthmaker, with a capital E. Winnebago Indian prayer. Is the soul the better self? The one above you, which has some wisdom, that's always trying to look out for you in some regard? And when a person says, the deity, earth maker in this case, the concept of a deity that a person relates to based on the culture and the time period they were born into, right? Are we not just trying to find the meaning inside of us? Sometimes people say, oh, if I move to the new city, I'll have a new life, which could very well be true. It was definitely true in my case to a certain degree. But if you move to a new city, all your problems, they'll just go away and you can just start all over. Which might be true to one given level. But what about the problems that follow you wherever you are? Because when you look in the mirror, they're right there. The ones that are not based on time and space. They're just perpetually lingering. Is it wise to continually avoid them? Or maybe is it compassionate exploration that can allow the person to look deep within and know that many of the answers, maybe not all of them, if you are afraid to commit that way, many of the answers are within. Unfortunately, again, how much of your squad, if you will, family, friends, etc., people how much of them have done a lot of good soul reflection? It's not to say that one has done better or more than another person, and that makes them holier than thou, because it's not. It's not how it works. And you can have someone, age does not necessarily equal wisdom. It can, because of more experience. But here's an example where I think it would be worthwhile for someone to consider. Going back to the window quote, the first one with Rufus Jones. If you meet a person who has never considered looking through another window for the eternal reality, and then on top of that, they don't acknowledge the power within the human spirit, soul, whatever you might call it, for substantial reflection, not surface level, but in the depths. And through that reflection can emerge a new person, if you will, who realizes, for example, that pessimism in this existence might be the predominant narrative because of the group you hang out in, because something happened in the past that cannot be let go of. Some kind of suffering was placed in your realm of existence, in your sphere, and it cannot be shaken. It cannot be broken through. It's very challenging to understand that, you can be stuck looking through a given window, and the temporary solution might appeal, might be attractive. It might be one that you want to hold on to because it's easier to just say the world is completely screwed up and that is why I suffer. And yet, how many times have you realized in life that when I choose the easiest route always, at some point, that's going to come back to me? And it's not to say that, if a person always blames outside effects on their life, that they are necessarily right or wrong, but just to observe what happens when you get angry. What happens when you refuse to acknowledge that another person you're interacting with is 100% okay with being a gaslighter? They have no qualms about it because they've been gaslighted too. They don't believe that forgiveness and mercy and love and compassion, they see those as weaknesses, maybe because of some biochemistry within them, because then you're really in a scenario. But to see the spirit or soul within a person is essential, including yourself. And I think that earth maker, you are a life maker. You create how much of your own reality. Maybe a lot of it has been forced upon you by others. Either it turned out okay or it turned out really badly. But part of this existence is active. You create the meaning. You allow the forgiveness to happen. You enjoy the art, the sport, the music, the time with other people. You are the experiencer. But then again, who is this you? Who is this I? I have a name. I have a family history. But I'm also part of just this general awareness. The same quiet space that you might be searching for to know the answers within that you seek. Not necessarily, you could have outside influence, but not necessarily to always seek answers, solutions, satisfaction, and validation from the outside. Because someone who doesn't do that kind of reflection, who you're asking validation from, do you ever get it? Last quote. Trying to be aware of time. I think we're already at something like 20 minutes. 195. What was the name I was looking at? Here he is. This is the chapter of the goodness of God. In the eternal goodness of the divine nature, parentheses, as in a miraculous mirror, end parentheses, the essence of all creatures is seen as one. Meister Eckhart, 1260 to 1327, German and Latin works. The essence of all creatures is seen as one. It's hard to see that when outside factors can end this physical form very quickly. Nature, the animal world, fellow humans, in a kind of primal existence. Maybe where good versus evil doesn't exist, but the lion hunts the zebra because it needs food. But then again, when it comes to humans, the fact that we have this higher level of consciousness, and yet many times we see in the world that it doesn't always pervade, that is somewhat troubling, I would say. But then again, maybe it's only troubling if you have the desire, the continuous desire to attach yourself to something. There has been a point, though, where I've realized, when you accept a potential truth that all humans love and suffer as you do, or you want to, hopefully you want to find love, meaning. And if not, have an inquiry as to why. But the fact that all human beings do have that to a certain degree, but admittedly, there's always the biochemistry that can make an individual not believe it exists, and they always turn to some kind of malevolence, if you will. You can then predict and know, what makes people happy, what makes them feel content, what makes them feel scared, what are they afraid of, what are they perpetually thinking about, given stimuli on the outside of the self. You can see patterns emerge. Once again, just maybe if this is helpful for more practical use, if you find out that a family or friend member, when you go to read about it and you go to recognize the signs, is a legitimate person who gaslights, the definition and the action of it, you'd have to go look it up to be sure for yourself. But if you come to find out that they do that on a regular basis because they are denying that your reality is real, and they just want you to conform to what they believe to control you for power, or whatever else it is, or because they have suffering that they, have not been able to, observe and forgive themselves. That is a window into the eternal of the soul, for the second quote. And part of what helps break that away is you realize that all humans, are born, have a life, things occur in that life, however long that life may be, and then they pass on back to the place whence we came, whatever that might be. You'll have many people argue over that and call that spirituality or religion. No, we definitely came from this place beforehand, and this is definitely where we're going after. Instead of just loving one another, we argue over which window of the world is correct, without realizing that people look through different windows, but they're generally looking at the same place. Wanting to be loved, wanting to belong, wanting to laugh so hard with friends that the stomach hurts. I've been baffled before, trying not to do the I, right? But I've been baffled before when I meet someone who says, no, human beings aren't the same. The Hindu is not the same as the Christian, as the Jew, as the Buddhist, as the Muslim, as the secularist, atheist, whatever else it might be. They're all different. Well, maybe by their prescribed, ideology, they're different. And again, a portion of the population whose biochemistry does not allow, will never allow, for them to fully empathize and care with the needs of others. That would be a whole good conversation on being able to recognize those traits in other people so that you don't fall for those traps that narcissists and others would put you in. But if you just sit here with now, how many of the problems of the story that I've told myself start to just dissipate? Or you notice the anger as it arises in a given situation. And little by little, like Bruce Banner, before you turn into the Hulk, because when you turn into the Hulk, it's too late, right? Then you have to do de-escalation. I don't know what the definition exactly of it is, but how about just, a positive escalation, or an escalation that is, keeping a baseline of always here. And that probably is a great closing point to say that this is why reading other perspectives, hearing wisdom from all corners of the globe through the centuries, and even through, is eons thousands of years? Millennium, thousands of years. You can find wisdom which brings you back to the main essence of who you are as a person. Even though I just read from a large book that talks about the search for God, I had a feeling when I bought it that many of the authors would talk about a deity in some regard. St. Augustine is going to talk about Jesus, just as Hafiz and other Persian mystics of the 13th, 14th, 15th century, Rumi as well, might talk about Allah within Islam. Although Rumi did at one point make a very clear poem. Rumi was beyond classification of a given religion. But that's a point for another discussion. The centering piece is finding it within yourself and doing better every day to the best you can. But if your mind is telling you lies about yourself, that you can't forgive the one event, maybe you can't, but can you at least let it alleviate itself within you so that it doesn't stop everything else you need? The daily sleep, the daily water intake. The answer, enough times to matter, shows up. if I can look at it from a different perspective, if I can listen to the internal wisdom that my body says, you need more sleep. You haven't been getting enough sleep recently. There will be more parties. When you slow down enough, that kind of wisdom, it's there for enough things to matter. It is there within with making sound judgment. And if not, seeking resources outside. If you don't feel like you have the experience to make sound judgment on a given challenging task, whatever that task might be. But it's also, regrettably, part of the unlearning. You know, I've said this on recordings before, and I really will stop with this. If you grew up in a household where yelling was the mode of communication always, even in non-emergencies, become the one who doesn't yell anymore and slow things down. Your energy is contagious. Fighting leads to more fighting. Hate leads to more hate. Or at least it can. But compassion to look inward and understand the totality of you. While painful at first, because you have to admit how imperfect you might be. The way you think, the way you interpret things, etc. It's like you go from the single window you are looking out, and now you are looking through all the windows of life's historical records, not to live and dwell there, because a lot of the wisdom is within if you get quiet, but to learn from what others have said. And again, to go from here it's 100% possible. If I have the will and the courage to change my perspective. Be well, always.